Every match block will contain at least one or more allow statements. Personally, I like to think of allow as a function that takes two arguments. The first argument is the operation that you want to allow, like a read, write, update, or delete. And the second argument is a predicate or boolean that resolves to true or false based on some kind of application logic that you have, like whether or not a user is logged in or whether or not they have the right role in some other document in the database. Let's start by looking at the first part of the equation, the operation that you want to allow. At the top level, you can allow reads, which would include single document reads and also queries of multiple documents. Then you have write, which includes create, update, and delete operations to one or more documents in the database. When it comes to reads, you can use get for read requests for a single document or list for queries of collections. But it typically comes into play more often with writes. Instead of write, you can use create to write a new document, update to write to an existing document, or delete to remove a document. You'll put these to use all the time. For example, there are many cases where you might have a user that can create or update their profile information, but you only want to have an admin be able to delete the document. In fact, I would say that I rarely use allow write in my own security rules just because it's too broad of a statement, and I almost always want it to be more granular. So if you have something that should only apply to, say, create and delete, you can just separate those two by a comma and use the same condition without having to repeat yourself. Now, one little side note here is that when you add allow without any condition after it, it automatically resolves to true. So it's the equivalent of saying allow whatever operation true. The final thing I want to mention is that when Firestore analyzes your rules at runtime, it's going to look for the first allow statement that resolves to true. In other words, once something is allowed, it cannot be unallowed somewhere else in your rules. Everything is locked down or false by default, and that means it's your job as the developer to write the bare minimum amount of allows necessary to implement the security logic. The bottom line there is that you should only allow something if it should 100% be allowed all the time in that case. Now that we know the fundamentals of allow, it's time to look at some basic conditions.